It is a bold statement, but the fact is like it was a decent loss. We didn't get steamrolled, right? We didn't get Vega esported, right? And like, I know.
Oh no.
Oh, whenever we brought up the standings during cast, we haven't talked about how poor QVG had been.
Hello guys, welcome back to Behind the Talent podcast. I am your host Pyro and I am joined by my first time on this podcast member here, Wumbi. Hello Wumbi, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing today?
Okay, I just got off work, so I'm pretty excited to get involved in this podcast though.
We've introduced Wumbi, but let me introduce our special guest for this evening. This is MrEaster from Vivid United, who obviously plays in the Major League. Welcome, MrEaster. How are you doing? How are you doing?
I am doing great. How are you?
Oh, I'm good. Thank you for asking. I'm flattered. Yes, are you happy to be on this podcast? First time.
So happy. I am more excited than anything.
Obviously, you've watched a few of these before, and now it's your time to shine. Your time to be on this podcast.
Of course, I'm an attention seeker, so...
Your time to throw off some of your opponents, give them a little bit of a dig in the arm, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. You know what I'm... That's assuming they watch these, you know? But if they did, they'd be scared. They'd be scared.
They'd be scared. They wouldn't want to play against you next week. Exactly. You'll get that tactical advantage.
Yeah, exactly.
Wumbi, what has happened in this week's minor league?
Well, let's start off with the first scores that we have for you, and then I'll head right into the standings. So we had, for the first game of this week, Barney's Trusted Dinosaurs. They got a forfeit win against Visu. Then Guardians Alpha had a forfeit win against Lawless. So 2 forfeit wins in the row. Then we had Yachty Sports versus Godini's. This wasn't really, it was kind of a close game, but at the same time, it wasn't. Godini's take a comfortable 7-4 win. Then we had Team Invictum versus R Esports. That was a 7-5 win for Team Invictum. A lot of people predicted them to win that game, and they did it so. At Esports, and also versus at Esports versus Nerf Miners, that is going to be played this Sunday, so we won't have a stream ready. But in turn with those the scores that have been updated for this week as well, we do have the minor league standings for you too, which brings us to the fact that Godini still retain their first place position with 16 points. At the bottom of the table sit Lawless, and also the thing about Lawless is the fact that they did forfeit their minor league spot, so they're no longer here, and that means that any team that has come up against them will get the full 3 points due to them like forfeiting their spot. Means they forfeit all of their games against those respective teams. In second place, we do have Nerf Miners, who again are playing this Sunday against at Esports. And then the middle of the park, we have 2 teams on 10 points, 1 team on 12. The 1 team on 12 is in 4th place. That's Team Invictum. The 2 teams in the 5th and 6th spots having the same type of points is at Esports versus Yachty Sports. So at the moment, it looks like Godini's are in a very healthy spot when it comes to the minor leagues, and no surprise it's there. They have a stacked team. They look insane.
It's very tight between the top, though, isn't it? Between Goldini's and Nerf Miner. It could go any which way. There's only one game between them. And MrEaster, this is where I'd like to ask you to come in. Who do you think will actually win the minor league? Given we've only got 4 play days left, it's very close. I know you're in the major league. You probably don't pay too much attention to the minor league, but do you have any thoughts of where the teams will come? Who will win?
Do you know what? I completely agree with you on your last point. I don't pay that much attention to minor league, being in the major league, but, you know... I mean, you know, all you have to do is look at the standings and see who's on the roll and who's not. You know, just, you know, looking at some people with like 9 losses, I doubt they'll be the ones to come out on top. But I mean, Goldini's looking pretty strong, right? So,
yeah.
You know, you kind of just have to look at the kind of top 3 and just kind of put your money on these guys.
Is your team starting to sort of prepare? Because obviously next season, one or 2 of these teams will be joining you in the league. So are you looking towards Goldini's, Nerf Miners to say, these are our competition. Maybe we'll start preparing for these teams, seeing what they're good at, seeing what they're bad at, and start to develop strats to counter them, really?
All I gotta say, man, is we look at everyone. We're always prepared. That's anyone who even comes close into our crosshairs. You know, we see them. You know what I mean? minor league or major league, it doesn't matter.
Just get them out of the way. Be prepared for anything.
That's exactly right.
That is the minor league, though. So let's go on to the major league, where you can have more of a say into this, MrEaster, your thoughts on the major league. But first of all, let's go over the results. So the first game, the first day of this player day, we had Laburnum Gaming versus Humble Academy, which was a 2-0 victory to Laburnum Gaming, that being on Villa and Clubhouse. The second game, the second player day, was Loud Esports versus Ultrac, and that was a 2-0 victory for Loud Esports, taking an 8-7 win on Chalet and a 7-3 win on towards Villa. The third play day, we had Praetorian versus Vega, obviously Praetorian at the top of the leaderboard, and that was a 7-1 win on Cafe and a 7-3 victory on Oregon. And then the last game that we had for this week was a 1-1 draw between Vivid and Machine Soldiers. And that was an 8-7 on Skyscraper and an 8-7 on Chalet. So a very close set of games there. MrEaster obviously going 1-1 against Machine Soldiers, that 8-7, 8-7. Can you take us through your thoughts on that game?
Oh, do you know what, that was an interesting game. I mustn't lie. Our play styles were very different. They were what you'd call the ranked monkeys. I suppose.
We know them.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So the types, very early on in Skyscraper, first couple rounds jumping out of every single window you can imagine, sort of thing. So it took a little bit of warming up. And it was also those types of games where one side was particularly stronger than the other. Like, both teams would not lose like a single attack round or defense round or whatever. So it was kind of who can win on the weaker side, sort of thing. Really, it was quite an intense game because we didn't feel like they outmatched us to the degree that we would 8-7.
Yeah,
but it happened, right? So it honestly, the whole game was really quite odd because you can usually tell if you're like trading blows and you're like, oh man, these guys are hard or something. But it's like it was a weird game because we didn't feel like it should have gone that way, but it did.
Obviously losing on your map choice as well, but then winning on their map choice, obviously being a close game, one of you had to give up. Do you think it was down to that overtime? Whichever side you started on overtime, obviously, if you're going back to forth, it's almost sort of the luck of the draw at that point.
That's exactly what happened, to be honest with you. It was kind of like just praying to the gods when overtime went in, and it's just like, oh, please give us like the side that was winning, which, to be honest, I can't remember which one. I think on Chalet. On Chalet, I think you would have rather been on defense. So the fact that we managed to pull it back, I mean, there's a clip of it on Twitter, but we won it on 7-7 on the attacker side, which was the unfavorable side. And there were two people on top of us. I on the 15 seconds left. So honestly, it's just the whole two games, both Skyscraper and Chalet, they were just tense, man.
One question that I had was, obviously I believe you guys picked Chalet, and not Chalet, sorry, my god, Skyscraper. And the interesting question that I had about this, because you don't see a lot of T4 teams experiment with the new map pools, especially not this season. It's the same old map pools. It's Club Oregon, and then I've also seen a mixture of border. I've seen at least like one or two Skyscraper, your Skyscraper included. Oh yeah, also Otrac and Humble playing on Skyscraper too. And I was gonna ask you guys, like, are you like, what is your situation with the new map? Like, are you guys gonna look to experiment a little bit more and maybe show us theme park one day, or even show us border one day, etc.? Like, what is your view on that?
Oh, okay. So I have to be careful my words here, otherwise I'm going to be slapped when I come back to the team Discord. So suffice to say, we're the type of team, and I don't think this is I don't think this will get me slapped, but a fair description is that we're comfortable on all maps.
Bold statement,
right? Yeah. I mean, some maps more than others, but the point, the theory being that, if you're comfortable on every map, you can't be, taken by surprise, sort of thing. Like for example, like in that last game with Chalet and Skyscraper was our pick, but that didn't mean we weren't uncomfortable with Chalet necessarily. So we're very open towards experimenting with new map. That's about, I don't know, that's about as much as I'll say, I think. Gotta be careful.
Yeah, you gotta be careful with your words. Obviously, with having versatility in every single map, there is that presence that you cannot play specifically well on one map. So if you have a team that plays really well on Chalet, on Oregon, on Border, for example, then you might be outclassed sometimes. Does that mean when in your team trainings, when you go into scrims as well, you have to focus more time, you put into more time into your team to focus widely on that vast array of maps?
Yes, that's exactly right. It is a bit of a jack of all trades, master of none sort of situation, but the vague statement that I will create is that we do focus on some particular maps a little more effectively. So it's not necessarily an even split of time on all of the maps.
Yeah,
we do focus on certain maps a little more.
We're not going to name them.
No, we're not. So essentially the point I'm trying to make is, we're a jack of all trades, but master of some.
Yeah, there's like maybe 3 or 4 that you would prefer to play on.
Absolutely.
In that sort of win. So yeah, that makes more sense. That is the recap of the week, though. Now we will move on towards any of the league news. Wumby, do you want to take us away with any of the weekly transfers, any of the news that's coming into the week for week 6?
Yeah, certainly. At least I'll start with the minor league, since I did start with the minor league standings and the results,
Yep.
And all that stuff with Lawless. But Barney's Trusted Dinosaurs have brought in Squeaky, and they've added in their 5th, so they're gonna be good to play for the rest of the minor league week. For Nerf Miners, though, they also add Elias, so that'll be interesting to see how they fit him into the lineup. Also, for Nerf Miners, another bit of news to tell you guys is that Mato is no longer the team captain, and that responsibility has been given over to Niklas. So Niklas is the new IGL for Nerf Miners. And again, just like with Elias, that'll be interesting to see how that shift in leadership kind of changes up what Nerf Miners tend to do, or what they're going to bring in terms of their strategy book, their strat books, and all that crap. At Sports have removed Axo from their roster, so a goodbye to him and good luck to wherever he ends up. Team Invictum bring out remove, or they drop Pred, and then they bring in Sir Pega. So again, some changes within that team, and just like with Nerf Miners, just like with Barney's Trusted Dinosaur, it'll be interesting to see how Sir Pega fits in. The big one though is that Atney Sports have removed Axu, and they're still looking for a fit, and we don't really know where they're gonna go from here and who they'll pick up. So that is the unknown entity. As for the major league, well, big news. MP9 has been dropped from Ultrac Esports, and Ultrac bring in a new player called Goalie. We have no information on him, so it'll be interesting to see how Ultrac operate with him in their lineup. Laburnum do some not good changes, but they drop a few players too. In fact, and Sanji, and also Hookah, or not Hookah, but they bring in Hookah in response to dropping those 2 players. I think Uno was their coach, or was their
He's the analyst. He was on the first podcast that we had.
Also, another change with the Humble Academy. It's not a transfer, but more or less a change of leadership for Humble Academy. Andrea is no longer the team captain. That responsibility has been given over to Kaysen. And so, just like with Nerf Miners, and now Humble Academy have that change in leadership as well. And again, where do these teams go from here, Pyro? Because these seem to be some really big changes, especially Laburnum Gaming taking out Sanji and Uno.
I mean, yeah, it's interesting about the team captain changes, because here's a question, and maybe a question we can ask to our guest here, MrEaster. Whenever you change a team captain or IGL, does that change the way the team performs, their strategies, or the mentalities? So say they are a very aggressive team, will that change in leadership change that to maybe be a more passive-aggressive team or a more passive team? MrEaster, any thoughts on that?
I mean, the difference between the team captain and IGL, of course, has to be defined here, because of course the team captain is just usually a front-facing thing in like discords and stuff like that, and usually a change in that doesn't really mean anything. Of course, but a change in IGL, absolutely, it will change. It'll change the entire dynamic about everything, right? And
obviously, this one's a bit harder to say because team captain is probably the face of the Discord in this way. So I see what you mean about the IGL, though.
Yeah, exactly, and you know every player, because the role of an IGL is quite difficult, right? And there's different roles of doing it. You know, you know, I used to be an IGL in some of my X teams, but I was an entry IGL, right? And I had a certain way of doing it. It wasn't very micromanaging necessarily, for example. But what that did allow for was a team that was more free and almost expressive in their ideas. So if someone saw an opportunity, they would go for it. Or more, someone else might be more micromanaging, who might be more on the hard support role, and that will change the whole atmosphere of the team, because you know you get a little less to say, you know, because he tells you need to go here, you need to play here, right? And you tend to not deviate from that. I mean, absolutely, a change in IGL will change the whole team, right? And
well said. We actually forgot something off the weekly transfers to do with Loud Esports, and that is Loki being added into the roster and Arabo and Mismo being taken off. So an interesting change coming on from there, as well as 2 players being removed and 1 player being added in. A lot of changes towards the major league, but even more towards the minor league, as I think you actually mentioned it earlier, Wumby, that Lawless have actually forfeited their spot, which means that's now 2 teams in the minor league which have forfeited their spots. It could change the dynamic.
Yeah, it's interesting that like Lawless were having some issues as well with their results in Talent League too. So they probably had like some chemistry issues as a result of those like really intense losses, and it probably became too much for them to the point where they just said, all right, I don't think we can do this anymore. This is clearly not working out. Let's just drop it. And so that's what happened. I'm more or less just interested in all of like the weekly transfers that I'm seeing, especially MP9 being dropped and goalie being added in. You know, because Ultrac are already struggling too, and I wonder if that will be like a really, really positive change for them, or if it'll like sink them even further down in Major League to the point where it's just like no contest, no doubts in the back of anyone's minds that they'll be relegated because of this change. Because MP9, I felt like when we did watch him, he wasn't really playing that well. And I mean, for the whole of Ultrac Esports, they haven't been playing this well this season. I don't think they'll disagree with me saying this, but I don't know. I'm interested to see how goalie will fit in, if he'll work, if he'll bring Ultrac out of this slump that they're in. Because, you know, let's face it, they've had a rough season, and it's been kind of hard to watch them kind of fall off like this. So
yeah, it all depends on how the team chemistry reacts. Certain teams have certain ways towards individuals. If you don't mesh well in a team, then obviously it can go really, really poorly. I'm not sure if MrEaster, you've had any sort of things happen in your team, with any team that you've been in, when new players come in and they don't really perform to what their standards should be.
Oh, well, absolutely all the time, right? And again, in terms of performance, it depends what you mean, right? Because some people can be mechanically like absolutely gifted, you know, the next sort of Shaiko sort of thing, but some people also just have terrible attitudes, and that will just break down like the mentality of the team and stuff like that. But you know, this happens like every day for every single team. It's such a common thing, because you know, team chemistry has to be just right. You know, even in Vivid, we got some eccentric characters, right? So some people will not deal well. Like if they're having a bad day, like, you know, their aim is kind of off, then you know they might start complaining about it or something like that.
Ego characters.
Yeah. I'm a bit of an ego character.
I mean, that's an interesting thing you brought up, because you know, having a bad game can certainly affect your mental, and it makes or breaks what happens at like when as the season progresses, I know a lot of people are very much mental players. They operate on mainly good vibes, and if the vibes are bad, if their shots are bad, if they're playing bad, that could really hurt them as a player, and it could really damage like their chemistry with the other team. And it's very important to like keep even if you're losing, just keep the vibes up and don't like. I mean, well, if you're in relegation, you should be panicking because that's obviously bad. But like, retain the vibes, keep mental up, but always keep in the back of your mind that every game is important and that you should be taking it seriously.
It's very much particularly that way when you're on the lower bottom of the leaderboard, especially for a team like Old Track and who needs to be pushing up points, who needs to be starting to get away from that relegation spot if they want to stay in the major league. So team chemistry is a massive thing for teams, and that's why some teams have mental coaches and have the actual coaches and analysts work with players most days to help support that mental ability and their mental mindset behind the game. Because if your mental's out, and I've said this many times on streams and in casts, if your mental is gone in the game, you've lost it. You can't come back. It's such a massive detriment to the team if your mental's gone. If one player slips, then the entire team slips.
Yeah.
And that's it can be the littlest of things that throw off your mental, right? And which is why it's important to get the team chemistry up, right? Because even if you have the perfect chemistry, everyone's great to each other. Everyone's like, don't worry, reset next round. Like if you feel like your aim is off, like you're just holding a piece of plastic in your hand instead of a mouse, right? Even that can affect your mental, right? Subconsciously
Confidence as well, isn't it?
That's right, yeah. Because personally, for just very, very subjective here. Like I feel like I'm very great at like mental resets. But the fact is like if I just miss one too many shots, I may think I'm great at mental resets, but subconsciously it's still hitting me hard. And then if you've got this new fifth in or something like that, that's also just raging about the fact that you're not doing well or something, then that's just all goes out the window, and then before you know it, you've lost the game.
Especially on their first game, if you have like one bad game, if you're known to have very good games, but you have that one bad game, the first game that he comes in, his view on you is going to be a lot lower than when it started, and that might play a big thing in towards the team.
Yeah, first games mean a lot. I think it was a different day in another league. We 7-1 a new team, and that team doesn't exist anymore. Which is
that can definitely it's a lot harder when you come into a league and you get 7-0'd or 7-1 in that way. I think if any team came into the minor leagues or the major league in towards talent after coming out of that playoffs will be very very disheartened by that.
That's exactly right. You don't want to be steamrolled. You want to at least have a chance, I think.
Make it close. 7-5, 7-4 is not too bad, but that 7-1, that 7-0 is just gone.
Yeah, exactly.
A very sad story there for MrEaster.
Yeah, but, well, not for me, for the other guys.
Not for you, but for the other team, yes.
Especially when their orgs like talk some big stuff on Twitter before the game.
No.
You know what? I'm from North America. North American players like to talk shit, and I really, I know a lot of people aren't fancy on the whole like talking shit on Twitter, and then also doing it on LAN as well. But like I find that type of stuff exciting because it's like funny to like see these it's entertaining to see these players like talk their shit, but also be able to back it up with results. Like Astralis have some really big from NA have some really big smack talkers like Iconic, for example, and I really like Iconic. I know a lot of people don't because I see the Twitch chat and I see a lot of people get onto him, but it's always nice to see teams be able to back it up as well. But when you can't, that shit hurts. It really does. I know it does, because when I talk my shit on Rainbow, I start doing bad, and it's just like I'ma still talk my shit anyways, but like still, that shit hurts. That shit hurts the mental.
It's a double-edged sword for absolute sure. I mean, our recent game against Machine Soldiers, like even though I wasn't casted, I was told to leave spawn because I was expecting the window jump out, and they did. But it was like a minute into the round, and I was still roughly in spawn.
Why would they do it a minute into the round? That's a bit too.
But yeah, you know, you talk the talk, walk the walk sort of thing. At the end of the day, I think if you're a fresh team, maybe give yourself a couple of games to see how good you are as a team before you start talking. Otherwise,
a bit of advice for the newer teams coming out there: listen to MrEaster. He knows what he's talking about.
Yeah, talk shit once you prove yourself.
Very true, you know.
But moving on, more importantly, let's go over to the games that will be played next week. Starting off with the Major League, we have Humble Academy versus Vivid United. Are you looking forward to that game, MrEaster there?
I'm always looking forward to games, sir.
Going on to the second game, we've got QVG versus Loud, Maestria versus Praetorian. That's going to be a very good game. Ultrac versus Laburnum Gaming, and then Vega Esports versus Machine Soldiers. A nice set of games this week, MrEaster. Any thoughts on the predictions? Any predictions here for these games?
Oh right, yes.
Oh, we're gonna get controversial here.
No, do you know what? Yeah. I've actually got the caster predictions here, which I can just use for myself.
Oh, Toot loves to vote against on the underdogs. I see Praetorian's tweet. I remember it was like last week where they were just like Toot period, and then they had like a dog just like punch the face of the camera. That was like a really funny tweet to me.
Well, kind of. So I would say pretty big. I wouldn't really say it's a big prediction, but Praetoria Esports is probably gonna beat Maestria.
Yep.
Mainly because we lost against Praetoria, and if I remember correctly, I don't think it was a. Was it a very close game for Maestria? I can't remember. It doesn't matter. We beat them. Point is, it's basic maths. If we beat them and we lost to the other guys, then the other guys must beat them, right?
Yeah.
But kind of looking at my own game.
Yeah, that's more importantly. That's what we're here for. Juicy stuff.
That's what we're here. Oh, I think we'll win. Honestly, I think we'll win every game from here on out. That's
it's a mid-table battle. Obviously, you're in fifth place and they're in sixth place, so you need all the points you can get.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it looks like most people, voted against us. Tripping Wumby. But I'm not offended, you know what? If anything, I see it as you saying, I'm challenging you, Vivid, to break my expectations. And to be honest, I don't think that's very difficult, so I'll do it.
It's motivation. It's motivation now. You use that as fuel. You can come back to Tripping, come back to Mumby and said, I told you so. That's
exactly right, you know what I mean? I would say, to be honest, I think that the hardest game we've had so far, it was against Praetorian. And to be honest, we did quite well for that anyway. I think it was like 7-4, 7-5 on the two maps, roughly. It was close, and I think it's important to note that I'm an entry for Vivid. They're expecting me to get frags, right?
Yeah.
And in those games against Praetorian, I had none.
Yeah, I think I remember. I think I was actually casting out. I remember. So yeah,
it was the Oregon. I went 0-11. How embarrassing is that, right? But no, just a quick correlation there to explain that game, right? We were talking about chemistry and vibes and all that.
The excuses are coming out now.
Yeah, that's right. But you never know what's happening behind a player in any particular game, right? That for me on the personal level, it was actually a really rough week for me then, right? And even though I thought I was going into the game right, I just wasn't. Do you know what I mean? And Praetorian was just the wrong team to face. Yeah, they were the wrong team to face that week. I reckon if we face them any other week, whether it was this week, next week, we may actually win because I won't go 0-11. But
is that a challenge? Is that a challenge?
It is a challenge.
Maybe a swim, Praetorian, if you're listening. Yeah. If you're listening, Praetorian, we might have to set that up.
It is a bold statement, but the fact is like it was a decent loss. We didn't get steamrolled, right? We didn't get Vega Esports.
Oh no. Oh. Now you got two teams on your back. MrEaster, you're going back to this Discord and you're going to get shouted at.
for reputational reasons, that's a joke. But
we cleared it up. We cleared it up now.
Yeah, it's fine. I don't care. I'm an ego player. So there's a few people that don't like me. But I have no real comments about any other of the games though.
Oh, no real comments. Okay.
No real comments. Yeah, because the main people in my crosshair are obviously Praetorian, So we're looking out for
What about
them.
Loud Esports as well? Because they're obviously quite close. They're only 3 points behind Praetorian, and they have been putting on quite a good showing these past couple of weeks.
I think it's just the fact that we haven't really faced them, that we're not too like fussed about them yet. Like, once they're in our crosshair, we'll have a closer
Once
look.
that week comes up, when that week comes up,
when that week comes up, right? And so you know, it's either people we have already faced or we're gonna face that we usually have opinions on, right? But so Loud, honestly, no huge opinion, to be honest.
not too big at this point.
Not too big, to be honest. We do have an opinion on QVG though, because we faced them in the qualifiers and we failed, right? So we didn't actually qualify for Talent League. And then it was through Matt, one of our players, that we ended up getting into here, and thankfully we're showing a strong presence here anyway.
You know, that's one thing that I wanted to talk about, because I feel like we haven't talked about, like, at least in like cast, because I don't think we haven't really had QVG, or whenever we brought up the standings during cast, we haven't talked about how poor QVG had been, especially after such. Are they third?
Yeah.
Okay, never mind. They're third. I thought they were pretty. Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Like, they're still having, like, it's like poor, but I mean they're in third place. They're in that top 3
acceptable
spot.
poor. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah,
they could be
it's like
they could be first.
They were nearly undefeated last season in the major league because they took that top spot. They had a pretty disappointing exit though in the Champion Series to Machine, who was then known as Machine Soldiers Academy, now just known as Machine Soldiers, and they're not looking terrible, but they're not looking the greatest neither. They're not reaching the potential that we know that they can reach So that's why I voted against them, because I'm not really too confident in them and in their performance when they come up against Loud, especially with the momentum that Loud have, and especially after that win against Ultrac. Yes, Ultrac are at the bottom spot in Major League, and they aren't doing the greatest. They're arguably the worst team in Major League right now. If you don't count like the very bottom place team, but still, that was a good win for them, because they took Ultrac all the way to OT, and they were able to win it through a 1v2 clutch, and then they won the second match pretty comfortably after that, got the full 3 points, and now look at them, they're doing great. So I don't know, but yeah, Mr. I know you said you had a lot of opinions, MrEaster. I want to hear about that, about QVG.
Honestly, of course, I think I over-exaggerate when I say I have a lot of opinions. I think the main point is we lost to them in the qualifiers. That was a different roster though, different world, and it was a while ago now, right? Now we got a strong roster, I reckon, stronger than before anyway. And I mean, just looking at their performance, as you said, 1B, I wouldn't be too concerned about them. Is my opinion.
We'll see about that when the day comes, won't we?
Yeah, I mean,
that's gonna be one ahead of a cast.
I mean, that's right. I mean, overall, my opinion is that, like, excluding Vivid, because that's obviously biased on my part. But like, out of all the other teams, Praetorian is, in my opinion, so far, is the strongest team.
Yeah.
And if we can do half decently against them, especially on a really bad week, mind you, I think we can pretty much do well against most other teams.
Yeah, I think you have a strong start definitely against some of the teams you're playing this week and towards the next coming weeks. And I think your goal here is to get towards playoffs.
I mean, our goal here is just to win every other game.
Yeah, win every game, push up towards the top of the leaderboard.
That's right. Yeah.
That's the major league, but more importantly now, not more importantly, but secondly, you have to go towards the minor league and the matches for this week. We have Barney's Trusted Dinosaurs versus Goldinis. So Goldinis being at the top of the leaderboard, definitely the favourites to win that match. Visu versus Nerf Miner. Nerf Miner have won that because Visu are out of the league. Yod Esports versus Team Aura on the third game of the week. A10 versus Teams Guardian Alpha. And then the final game is Invictum versus Lawless. Invictum have obviously won that game, as Lawless have forfeited from the league. So only 3 matches next week in the minor league. 1B, any thoughts on these wins? Obviously you've done your predictions already, but any sort of special shout outs for the minor league here? Any upsets that can happen, do you think?
Any upsets?
I mean, Barney's Trusted Dinosaurs we haven't seen. Yeah. You did actually vote for Barney's Trusted Dinosaurs. Obviously, we haven't seen them in the cast yet. Do you think they're a lying underdog here? Maybe they're a sleeper team.
You know what? I only did that because I'm tired of voting for Godini's. That's why I did it. You know what? I should be tired of voting for Praetorian, but like my I don't know what my winning my prediction percentage is looking like, so I'm just like I want to keep voting them in because that's a free win in my books. I'm joking. I think MS or Machine, what the hell, MrEaster have a good chance in that game, but I think Praetorian just looked too strong. But that was just my little 2 cents on a major league game. But yeah, that's the reason why I voted for them. And plus, we haven't seen them in a stream yet, so no free VODs on the Barney's Trusted Dinosaurs, but for Godini's there's a lot. And so with Barney's Trusted Dinosaurs, they could obviously capitalize on that unknown factor and surprise Godini's, but we have to see because I think Godini's look too strong. You know, if I had like a really weird opinion, or not a weird opinion, but an opinion nonetheless about the minor league so far, is that I'm actually really surprised about Guardians Alpha's position right now. 3rd place. Yep. Last season, they were almost facing relegation in the minor league, and they look really, really strong this season. And like I said, I'm very surprised because that was most definitely a team. That was most definitely not a team in the minor leagues that I thought would even be touching the top 4. But they are.
They are. They're playing really well. Obviously, they got the 2 free points from the forfeits, but every other team has that.
Oh yeah, right.
They've got 4 wins. What Guardians Alpha seem to be doing here is, instead of like drawing a lot of games, which we do see quite a lot in the minor leagues, especially at the start of the season, in the first 2 weeks we had a lot of draws happening. So obviously they've won their games. They've started to build up that point differential, which is helping them in this case. They're only really 6 points separating from the 2nd position and last position. So it's a very close league. 2 games, 2 wins separating from the 2nd place to the 8th position here, 1B. So it could go anywhere yet. You have to be careful in the minor league. It is only 1 game, and upsets can happen quite easily.
It's the same case for like the major league games. I feel like I've talked down too much on Old Track Esports, but I feel like it's kind of warranted. I feel like when they've played Humble Academy, I did vote against them, and the reason why I did was because Humble have had a somewhat decent season, and Old Track just haven't had that spark yet, I don't think. And I know it's only like 4 weeks left, but I think if Old Track can just since they've made the roster changes and they've taken out, if I can actually pull this up yet again, they've taken out again MP9, and they brought in a new player and goalie. I think again, if they really work with him and they're able to introduce him correctly, they're able to fit him into the right spot in which they brought him in for. Obviously they've trialed him, they thought he was a good fit over MP9, who's been with Old Track for a little bit. I think Old Track could most definitely bring themselves back up, because I think they have a decent team. I think they have a somewhat solid team, and I think they should be battling up for mid-table. I think they should be contesting more for top 3, but I think the teams right now in the major leagues are just too good. It's not a case of Old Track being like a bad team, because they're not a bad team. It's just everybody else is just a little bit better than them. And the same goes for Vega Esports, who sit at 10th place at the very bottom of the table. Obviously it's not the best position for them, but they've looked somewhat great.
They've had good moments, but it hasn't been the best, you know what I mean? That is pretty much the recap of this entire week and what's going into next week. Now we have some questions, going more into depth with our guest here, MrEaster. Questions about the Major League. We're going to focus on the Major League a lot more here. Obviously, we've asked a lot of questions based on the Major League, but can we go through, and what do you think the rankings will be towards the end of the season?
Oh, okay.
Damn.
This is your chance to shine here.
There's just that selfish being in me saying save Vivid first, right? Save Vivid first. Always say that. But I think everyone knows that's what we hope for. I'm gonna speak about this, I think, non-biasedly, so I'm just gonna remove Vivid from the picture, and I think that's probably the easiest way to go about it.
Yep.
So I think Praetorian is the strong. Like I said, Praetorian's the strongest team. Yeah. Right. So I would rank them 1.
Yeah.
I would probably rank and I'm also using the standings as my reference point here. I mean, like you said, Loud's having a really strong little win streak going, so I might just put them second. I will put them second. I think I'm gonna go out of order here and just go to the bottom as well. I will put Maestria, Ultrac, and Vega as the bottom three.
You think that's the easiest way to go? You're
I-
in the third place.
Just get them out of the way. I mean, Vega's got 4 losses, right? That's not a great showing, right? I'm sure they're great guys, but like
Same as Ultrac as well, isn't it? 1-0-4 at the moment. No draws.
They've
either completely played well or they've just binned it.
That's exactly right. Yeah. Maestra was, and this one comes more from what I experienced playing against them. They're good players, but compared to like the teams we faced, you know, like Praetorian, whatever, and just looking at other teams like Loud, QVG, I don't think they've got a ladder to climb in the standings, to be honest with you. And you know, their mental must be down. You know, 1-0-3.
Yep.
And you know, it must show, because after our game of Maestro, they brought out a looking for coach post on Twitter. So but, yeah. Machine Soldiers, they're an interesting one because we tied against them. But to be entirely honest with you, I think it's the opinion of us in Vivid, and but particularly the personal opinion of me, that I feel like we had a lot more to offer, and if it was on a better day, we wouldn't have drawn. You know, I think they're one of the only teams that play in the style that they do, and it takes a little bit to warm up to. You know what I mean?
They get a few free rounds, don't they? And then you start.
That's right. That's right. You come in expecting real competitive. Well, not to say it's not competitive. Anything is competitive if it gets you wins. But like, you know, you come in expecting like people who are hiding in sight or something like that, or like, you know, they do their setups and then they're waiting there for you to come to them, and you know they're too busy running out, sort of thing, and that catches
very
a lot of
aggressive team.
So I'll probably put them in the middle ground. Their aggression, I think, is not fueled by their mechanical skill. So, do you know what I mean? It would an aggressive style would be warranted if they could outgun everyone, which I don't think they can. So I think I would put them somewhere in the middle ground. I don't really have an opinion on Laburnum Gaming. Honestly,
you know
I've barely heard of them.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you know, I talked about QVG and how we don't talk about them. We also don't talk about Laburnum Pyro. I think whenever the standings have been brought up, it's either we don't talk about QVG or we don't talk about Laburnum, and that's another subject that I wanted to bring up, because Laburnum have such a good roster. They've been together for a while. This team looked like they were gonna disband in the summer, or not the summer, in the spring, and then they completely did like a 180 on us and said like, oh yeah, we're staying, and then now they're LFO, now turned into Laburnum Gaming. They're 2-2. We thought they could be a little bit better this season.
I think the only problem with that is we've talked about this quite a bit on the podcast between me and Gola, especially as well. They brought in quite a lot of new players. It seems to be that underdog in the major. They are in that 4th position. They can do really, really well when they have a very good day. And a lot of the casters, especially at the start of games, do predict them to win. So, MrEaster.
Well, I mean, using that information, can look at their standings. I mean, they're already in a fairly strong position, really. I mean, it's 2-2-0. They don't actually have a loss, right? So it's not like their mental is out of the roof, right? They made changes that they think will help them, right?
Yeah.
If they're right, they're only going to climb that ladder even more. They're going to get these wins and they're going to keep up their 0 losses. But on the other hand, no one can really predict how changes work, because, you know, team chemistry and all sorts of stuff, it's far more complicated than what it is. So it's pretty much down to how their changes are going to affect them, because currently they're already in a strong position-ish, right? And if what they changed they are correct about, then they're going to climb that ladder. But if they're wrong, they're just going to go down that ladder.
That's, you know, because I've actually been like, you know, I'm not sponsored by them or anything, but I am a big fan of like their roster. I think they have the right pieces, and they've been together for like a while. These guys I'm pretty sure, are pretty close friends in real life, and they obviously have a chemistry. Removing their analyst is really only, I think, going to be a small detail. It's not like they removed like the coach and they removed the IGL or anything like that. Sanji, I think, was just a substitute too. So, or I looked at their roster on the wiki, so oopsies, but like on the Wikipedia. So but yeah, I think, yeah, I don't know, because like with them again, they have strong pieces. Hunter's obviously a great player, partnered with Critical. Xerox a decent IGL, I think. He obviously, whenever I've seen Laburnum play, they have like really decent strats that I've been like, every time I've casted them, I've been really, really entertained by what they bring out. Spliz is a really good flex. P13 is a great support, and honestly, like, they're only, like you said, they're only 2-2-0 in the season, and I think, especially after their win, I think it was last playday this week. I can't remember who it was, but I watched a little bit of that game, and they looked so good. It was like a really good, it was a masterclass of performance. It was the first map Villa went 7-3, the second map Club went 7-2. They looked amazing in that game, and I think honestly, if they can build off of that momentum, if they can build off of that good performance, you could see them like challenging Loud, or even like the third. They're obviously going to challenge for that third place spot, but I think they could even take second place from Loud, because they're just that damn good. They need to be like a little bit more consistent, in my opinion, because they had this problem last season as well.
Yeah, and that's exactly the point I think I was essentially trying to make, is that, they are in a strong position. Can they climb that ladder? We'll have to see, essentially. That's essentially what I'm saying. I mean, even something like changing out an analyst can make a huge difference, right? And you might see that in the next game, right? Because they might just be a little more smarter, equipped with the knowledge of this new analyst.
I've got one more question to ask you. Have you got any advice for any up and coming players looking to go towards the T4 leagues? Is there any sort of requirements that are needed, or have you got any sort of advice towards these people?
You got to put in your hours, homie, right? There's a lot of tier 4 players out there, right? And they play like once or twice a week or something, and it's like, what are you actually expecting out of this? Then you're not going to get anything out of it. Second of all, I think that there's a large range of mechanical abilities in T4, right? Of which that range decreases a lot more when you go up in tiers. Which should tell you one thing: you can't slack on your mechanical ability, right? Rainbow is already unique as a game as it is, because it's one of those things where like you don't have to be like the aim and reaction god to hit diamond or whatever in ranked. But like from a competitive standpoint, it's still an FPS at the end of the day, and if you can't win your ones, you're not going to go anywhere. It kind of comes in hand with the hours. If you put in hours, you are always training your aim and reactions. Just never slack off on it.
Is it sort of like trying to find your role as well? Obviously, you're a fragger, and I'm the complete opposite to you. As being a caster, you're more inclined to be that support player, more inclined to be that IGL role. So would you suggest trying to find out your role earlier, or would you suggest be more like, let's say going towards a flex role, play with more operators so you have more of a choice to specialize, or diverse?
I would say when anyone picks up the game, they're effectively a flex, aren't they? Because they have no opinions on the game, so they're just playing whatever meets their fancy, and I think that's the strongest way to go. I don't think anyone has a set role. I think people need to and should play the roles that they want to play and improve in those roles as such. Like when I started in T4, just because I wasn't as loud spoken as now, you would effectively be putting hearts. I mean, the heart support is the goalie of Rainbow, that's exactly right. If your last pick is like, you okay, you go in goal, or in this case it's like, okay, the heart support sort of thing, right?
Heart support.
Yeah, and it's easy.
All our heart supports there.
Exactly, and but it's easy to be stuck in that position. But it's important to know that if you want to be a fragger, you can be a fragger, and honestly, it's all down to
confidence, I'd say.
Exactly the word I was going to use, mate. We're
on the same level.
yeah, we're on the same wavelength. It's all about confidence. It's all about the mentality. Because I mean, sure, because already in my world of Rainbow, if you're a competitive player, you should have a minimum amount of aim and reactions anyway, right?
Yeah.
So some of my like friends who are hard supports, right? They're really great because they were fraggers who transferred to hard support because they enjoy the role more. They provide a lot more for their team because they might be a hard support, but they will frag, right? And that picks up a lot of slack. Essentially, what I'm saying is like assuming that everyone can train their aim and reactions. Just be the role you want to be. It's all about confidence and mentality. Fraggers think differently from hard supports.
You have to have the correct mentality to be like, oh, I need to check every single corner. Whereas with hard support, if the team fails in some way, if the fraggers don't perform, you're normally going to be the last one alive. So to go on to the point, you have to have your aim, but more importantly, you have to have game knowledge. So if you do want to be a hard support, you have to learn about the games, the callouts, the current meta. So that is probably one idea that I'll give. But more of a fragger, because obviously you are a fragger. Would you say it's more learning how to do certain mechanics, Shaiko leaning, learning to play off drones a lot more?
It is a lot of on the dot thinking. It's really that quick decision making, because a lot of people kind of come up to me and they're like, Easter, how do I hit champ, right? I feel like when I enter the elo, I just lose things. Why do they do these things that I would otherwise be killed for, right? And it's because it's all about quick decisions. You have to learn to think like a fragger, right? And it's a lot about seeing windows of opportunities and understanding how people play. If you get what I mean.
Yeah, I think people have this stigma around obviously your role as entry being, oh, I just need the gun and skill. You need this next level mentality to be like, oh, I need to have this quick reaction time, this quick decision making, as you were saying, to perform well for a team, because it's not solely just aim, is it?
No, that's exactly right. And honestly, I think both hard support and fragger roles have essentially their wrong image. If you go, I mean,
Yeah.
a lot. There's a lot of fraggers out there. They're these like you know the term in the community. It's these 16-year-old fragger champions, whatever, right? But they don't think, right? Which means that you bring them into a competitive environment and they get stuck in T4 forever.
Yeah,
they get stuck forever.
Pressure.
And the equivalent for that for hard support are those hard supports that just can't aim or react as well, like, because they think they've got the brains, and like you need a bit of everything, really. It's a bit of a scale. You need everything from everything, but to what degree, sort of thing, and how you utilize those skills. And I always implore people who feel like they're stuck at a certain rank, or mechanically they feel stuck, is always asking myself, why did he do that? If I get absolutely smacked by this guy, this absolute raging gunner, I ask, why would he do that? And then next time I'm in that sort of position, I'm like, what would a player like that do? What would a real good fragger do? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think another thing is like, stop blaming other people, because I know a lot of people, whenever they make a mistake, they blame other people as well.
They blame other people. You always have to look at yourself. You really have to be really critical. Like, at the end of the day, if you're looking to play T4, you want to be competitive, you have to start seeing this as a job. So you have to start being constructive, right? It's all about seeing the improvement in front of you and constantly being conscious of it, right? Because I feel a lot of people get stuck in the game. They play the game and they're like, oh, that was bad or that was good, let's look at it. But like, every time you're in a corner holding an angle, you don't just have to be focused on someone like about to peek you. You can also always be thinking at the back of your head, what can I do? What should I do? And all that sort of stuff.
It's inspiring to hear you like talk about that type of stuff, because I know plenty of like T4 players who aren't willing to give that advice. Hell, I know even pro players who aren't willing to help out the younger guard or any of that. I don't want to name a few because I don't really care about all that stuff. I care about interactions like this where you're giving like solid advice. It's keep, if you want to be a specific role, focus on what's that specific role, but also focus on what makes the other roles important as well, etc., etc. Another question that I wanted to head into, because not only are you guys looking to qualify for the Champion Series, through the Major League and stuff like that, but we're also looking towards the Titan League, the season 2 for Titan League. Obviously, that's a new competition that Talent League has made up, and I was wanting to get your thoughts on that. Like, are you guys looking to join in on that next season? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, of course. At the end of the day, we're all focused right now on building our careers in Rainbow, and I mean, a lot of us in Vivid have been here for a number of years, and I've been playing comp since year 1, season whatever, and I feel we are in a position right now that has a lot of growth in front of it, right?
Yeah.
Because that's what you're really looking for in T4, right? Yeah, you can go win all that money or whatever if you can, but like at the end of the day, what you need to do is grow your career. Right. So of course we are absolutely aiming towards things like Champion and Titan series, because we want to be seen, right? We want to be talked about, and we want to show ourselves, because at the end of the day, that's what will get you closer to T3.
That's an interesting, not an interesting thought. That's a thought or a sentiment that's like shared with a lot of T4 players, and even T3 and those in Challenger League for both NAEU and even APAC, the APAC region, and Japan and all that stuff. Everybody's trying to get at the top. Everybody's trying to take out the top dogs, and you can only do that by taking it bit by bit, one step at a time. And you've been here for a while, you have that experience, and it's nice that not only do we get to hear that experience, but those out there watching who probably look at you and say, I want to start out where he's starting out. I want to be in a position that he's in, because it's obvious that he's going to take it far one day.
I've got no more questions. I think, Wumbi, anything else you want to add on towards this conversation here, towards the end of this podcast?
One question I wanted to ask is, obviously you guys, we talked a little bit about your next match which will be against Humble Academy, and obviously the game that I mentioned about Laburnum like going off and like winning the way that they did so dominantly, that was against Humble Academy, and you guys have, well, not only that VOD against them, but you guys also have a numerous amount of VODs against them, because we've cast them quite a bit in Talent League, like we've casted you guys just a little bit. And I was wondering, not really what your thoughts are on that matchup. Again, you have these VODs, like, are you going to, like, and I don't know if you've watched them yet, but if you have, like, what are you expecting for Humble to bring out on the table? What are you looking for? Is there any plays specifically on Humble, or even 2 players or 3 players that you're focused on, and that you will probably be not really making a target of, but you will be keeping a close eye on in your upcoming matchup against them?
I mean, that's what a coach is for, isn't it? No, no, but as a serious answer, it's we look at teams very objectively. There never is any particular player. There's never really any particular things that we look out for when it comes to teams. We research them, absolutely. I mean, that's not exactly like a trade secret. People do it. Everyone does it, right? Everyone looks at their enemies beforehand, right? Yeah, we gather what we need to know about them, and we just go in with great attitudes and just expecting a good game, sort of thing, right? Of course, we've got a pre-idea of how they'll play. Like, are they going to be ranked monkeys? Are they going to be really strategic? Are they just going to be really afraid and anchor up and whatever? I don't think we ever look out for certain players, and to be honest, from a personal point of view, I think it's a dangerous mindset to get into when it comes to quote unquote looking out for players and stuff like that.
You focus too much on them at that point, don't you? You'd be like, oh, this person's like really aggressive or something. We're going to focus on him, and then get caught by the other players.
That's exactly it. It subconsciously gets on you, to be honest, and to understand to a degree what I mean. A really emphasized feeling of that is if you're in a league and you come up against a close friend on the enemy team. You get this kind of feeling inside, right? Because you spend so much time thinking about it, and it's like, oh, I don't want to lose, or all that sort of stuff. So yeah, I think it's a dangerous mindset to get into, like looking out for specific players or stuff like that. I think the best way to go about any any competitive game is just be really objective, to look at the stats, look at the way a team plays and stuff like that. And to be honest, if there was an option in Rainbow to randomize everyone's names on the scoreboard, I would.
Yeah. It's more about the play style and the tactics more than the
exactly
plays itself.
Yeah,
exactly, because people get too caught up in politics even mid game. do you know what I mean? Like I'm sure everyone's heard of Packball, right?
Yeah.
right.
From I used to be in a team with him, and when he finally got into a team that he grew quite a lot with, and this was the stack that he was with, J Dats and whatever. Every time I would come up against him in the league, right? For some reason, just the fact that he used to be a teammate just would get like subconsciously on me, and it would just ruin the whole mental and stuff like that. But he didn't care, right? And look where he is now. But so, I was so focused on Packball, I didn't care about the rest of his team, and then.
Yeah, or even your own team at the same point as
exactly.
You start to go in that 1v1 mentality almost. You start to get that.
Yeah.
Siege is a team game.
Yeah, and then you sit there wondering, oh man, if I lose this, he'll never let me live it down, or stuff like that. And who cares? It's just too much thinking. Just got to be objective with this game, So I never ever look out for players.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting point. And I really really like your answer to that question too.
And I'm glad you've been such an entertaining guest on this podcast, though, Easter. I want to say a massive thank you for coming on.
Thank you for inviting me on.
It's been an absolute pleasure to talk with you and chat more about what goes on behind the talent. I also want to. Well, actually, I'll let you talk before you're off there.
No, didn't cut me off. No, thank you for inviting me on. It's absolutely a pleasure. I am an attention seeker, so this has been very enjoyable for me.
Feeds that ego. Feeds that ego so good. It's okay. Well, we could do it more. We'll get on in a couple more weeks. See your thoughts towards more the end of the season. It'll be a pleasure to have you back. I also want to say a massive thank, as always, to Trippin behind the station. Always working on the podcast, always being there if trouble is needed. But 1B, it's been a pleasure to have you on this week, and I will hope you'll be on more podcasts.
Yeah, I really do like these conversations with players, and I like having conversations with coaches as well. I don't do it for Talent League, but I do it for other leagues where I talk to other coaches and outside of that, and it's nice to get that extra bit of insight and that extra bit of game knowledge too. So I really enjoyed this.
Thanks for having you on. But this has been it. This has been Behind the Talent Week 5 recap. I have been Pyro, and I have been joined by 1B, and we will catch you guys next week.